So 2022 was a really weird reading year for me. Normally when I read, I'm reading for escapism, and I found myself reading and rereading a lot of my favorites this year. I think that instead of escapism and experiencing something new and falling in love with new characters, new stories, I really just kept going back to a lot of my old favorites. I think that with everything that's going on right now, in my life, and I'm not really going to get into it here, there's been a lot of really, really highs and some really, really lows this year. And I think I just wanted the calm comfort of, books that I've already read, books that I know how they end, that I know they have happy endings, or kind of what to expect based on the emotion that I'm wanting to feel. So I do have a list of 5 books this year that actually stood out as they gripped me as new reads to me, reads that people have recommended to me, reads that I've seen all over the internet that I ended up, really falling in love with. And the first one that I want to talk about is Love on the Brain. This is by Hazelwood, who, by the way, guys, Allie is a fantastic writer. She writes a lot about females in STEM. So, a lot of science-backed characters, and just, they're all very gushy, very, I don't want to say stereotypical romance, but they kind of are. And I really, really like this one. So it follows our main character, B, and she works for NASA, and she is developing these essentially helmets in a program that works with these helmets for astronauts. And like I said, she is in STEM, so she is a bit of a badass, but obviously she has a little bit of insecurities that I think a lot of romance characters do, both on the male and female side, identifying male and female side of the romance novels that I read. So basically she meets or re-meets this gentleman named Levi, and they are thrown into this program together, and they have to work together to develop these helmets. And the helmets are super important, so there's a lot, on the line here. And Levi and B did not have the most wonderful first meeting. Everybody tends to believe that Levi is this very gruff, very cold, very hot. That's definitely stressed in the story. He's very grumpy, tall, dark, and handsome, hot dude. And I really ate it up. So I really like Allie's writing because it's very, I want to say it's more medium paced, not necessarily fast paced. I think a lot of romance novels lean more towards the fast paced aspect of it. And it was the perfect blend. So definitely a medium read for me. I didn't find myself wanting the story to go faster. I didn't find any of the dialogue or the jargon because it is more science based. That's not necessarily a field that I'm super familiar with. I didn't find anything really weighed down. It was very light in a way, but definitely I think had some very important messages. I really love how Allie, really focuses on women in STEM. I think that is incredibly important. So I got a lot out of this aside from just the romance, but it's definitely a hate to love romance as well, which is one of my favorites. It is, actually, I'd probably say it is my favorite, and she does it so well. You just can't help but falling in love with both the characters. So that's the first book that I wanted to talk about, and I do have 4 other ones that I'm interested in sharing with you. The next one that I read is actually Fairy Tale by Stephen King, which was a really interesting book. I didn't actually think that I would like it as much as I did. So basically this follows our main character, Charlie. He is a young boy. If I remember correctly, he's either a junior or senior in high school. I think he may be senior because there's a lot of talk between him and his dad about him going away to college. But basically he meets a character named Howard. Howard is the classic super grumpy recluse dude who lives in the really run down big old house at the end of the cul-de-sac. And Charlie meets him one day because his dog Radar is barking, and he goes out there and finds that Howard has fallen. So him and Charlie strike up a kind of I don't want to say friendship because Howard is not the most likable dude, but my favorite part about this book is I actually really like Charlie and Howard's relationship. If you followed me for any point, any amount of time, I love the old grumpy mentor, and that is essentially what Howard becomes in a roundabout way. But the story actually doesn't, that's not even really an important part of the story, because the longer Charlie and Howard are around each other and more things that happen to Howard, Charlie starts discovering basically this alternate persona that Howard has. And, no one really knows anything about him, but it's even more than I think Charlie was expecting, because he comes to find out that in the shed in the back of Howard's home is a portal basically to another world. And in that other world, there is a sundial that you can stand on that will basically de-age you, so it makes you younger. And Radar, the whole, I'm getting like kind of teary-eyed just talking about it, but the whole point of the book is basically to save Radar's life. So not even to save Howard, who is an older gentleman who towards the end of the book, or towards the beginning of the book, you know, does pass away, and leaves everything basically to Charlie. So the story kind of picks up to where Charlie is attempting to reverse the signs of aging in Radar, and she's such a good dog. And the whole time you're reading the book, you're like, is this going to be when she passes away? Because Stephen doesn't hold back. And this being one of the first Stephen King books I've liked in a really long time, I was so pleasantly surprised. And it does have more of like a fantasy element to it. I wouldn't say it's really horror, and this is the first kind of deviation that Stephen's done that I've been like, okay, I can get on board with this, because as you guys know, I think a lot of his like more experimental outside of horror genre books have been actual garbage. So this is the first Stephen King book I've bought in a really long time that I ended up keeping because I really did enjoy it. And I had a coworker that was reading it and we were talking about it, and you know, to have that like renewed sense of like love for Stephen's writing, because I've always loved his writing style, just not necessarily recently the types of books that he's coming out with. So it was really nice to like feel kind of at home. And like I said, I've been reading a lot of comfort reads recently and books that I have read before and have loved. So it was kind of nice in a way to be able to read something new by Stephen, that it was a new story but had all of the same elements that I normally really enjoy from him. So the next one I want to talk about is once again by Hazelwood, and I think this was a bit of a hit or miss kind of book for people this year, but it is The Love Hypothesis. I actually really enjoyed this. I love the two main characters, Olive and Adam. It is a fake dating trope, and it is once again a character in STEM. So I'm not going to linger too long here because obviously it does have similar you know, kind of like the things that I like about it. So we have a dark brooding, you know, main character. We have, you know, a hate to love, essentially romance going on here. The main love interest is known as like the really gruff, like grumpy dude. He's actually kind of known as like a tyrant in the book. And then we have Olive, another strong female lead in STEM. So there's not a whole lot of like deviation in that way, but what really made I guess this book stand out for me would be Olive. And towards the end of the book, and hence why I can't go too in depth, some of the things that she really struggles with, they're really important to the plot of the book. But if you're looking for a character who really does have a lot of self-worth and kind of knows what she wants to do, but is challenged on that and sort of, you know, that back and forth, I think you'd really like this one. But once again, another strong female lead in STEM and a really just lighthearted, fun, you know, very cute book to read. I really do enjoy like the romance genre as a whole, and I think Allie is definitely a, you know, standout author for me this year. Now, the next book that I want to talk about is actually not just what has topped being one of my favorite books of all time, and an author that has become one of my favorite authors of all time, but also one of the best audiobooks I have ever read in my life, and it is Project Hail Mary. If you guys have not read this, first off, Andy Weir is so like the books that he's read, if you've read The Martian, if you've read Project Hail Mary, I haven't read his other one actually, and I know Rosario Dawson does the narration for the audiobook, but Project Hail Mary, it stands out as one of, I think, the best books I've ever read in my life. And it's very interesting because generally I don't really gravitate towards sci-fi. If you've been here for any amount of time, you know that I'm not a huge sci-fi fan, but Ryland Grace, the main character of this book, and his counterpart, Rocky, are just like the best friend duo that I didn't know that I needed. Did I know that a grown man needed to be best friends with a 600-pound rock spider thing? No, but they are absolutely my favorite. So if you've not read Project Hail Mary, basically what it is about this essentially alien life form that is eating the sun of Earth. And Ryland is a middle school science teacher, and he gets roped in by the government to basically find not a cure, but a way to build a spaceship and assemble a team to figure out how to circumvent like what's happening. And that is the whole story. So it is Ryland waking up on the spaceship and sort of slowly throughout the story regaining his memories. And he does meet an alien life form, my favorite character in a book of all time. His name is Rocky. He is, like I said, an incredibly large stone spider, essentially. You know, they talk about like his claws and his carapace, and he sounds terrifying. But when you are listening to or reading, like listening to the audiobook or, you know, reading the book, he is just such a little dough ball. And I love their relationship and the whole story. Like I said, it's simplistic in that it is Rylan and Rocky working together to, you know, solve this issue that both of their home planets are having. Both of them are being affected by what is called astrophage in the novel. But like I said, it is such a good story about, there's so many hard-hitting things in it that I don't think are super aware till you know, really get into it. But, you know, Rylan, the whole book is wondering why he's there, why he's important, what he can contribute. It is linked to sort of his interactions with Rocky. It's linked to, you know, his inner monologue of, like, you know, attempting to save the human race. It's in his interactions with the other characters outside of Rocky. And it just really puts into perspective for me, essentially, because he woke up without his memories, that you can choose to be whoever you want to be. Like, you're not narrowed down to being like a specific person, and you get to see him, you know, regain his memories and start to kind of question like who he was before, and does that matter? And it's a beautiful book. And once again, if you are into audiobooks, it is the narrator who does Project Hail Mary and The Martian, fantastic guy. Like, I would listen to anything by him. But the story itself is just so much fun, and just the, you know, the science behind it too. Like I said, I'm not really in like the science field or really know much about science. Like, so for me, it was still really easy to understand, because essentially Rylan is explaining to Rocky like certain scientific things, you know, throughout the story. Like, as they're communicating, you get to kind of pick up on that and sort of learn it. And I thought it was really cool. And it's also one of Rocco's favorite books too. I think it would top as like his favorite book of all time. It's just, it's so good. And so I don't want to say lighthearted, but it's an easy read. So it's like a more medium pace. It's got a little bit of like flashbacks if you're into that. I actually found them not jarring at all. I thought they really moved the story along, even though, you know, we were going back in time. So just be aware of that if you're not really, you know, for those kinds of things. But 10 out of 10 would recommend. Absolutely one of my favorite books of all time. And the last book that I want to talk about is actually one that I would recommend to basically everyone. It was very poignant, I guess I would say. I saw G reading it at one point and she recommended it, and I guess I just wasn't really in like the mindset for it. But it's The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. This follows our main character, Nora, and trigger warnings here. Nora does die in the beginning, and she, you know, just doesn't know necessarily like what she's doing with her life at the time. She feels very defeated. She feels very empty, and she goes to what is considered like the afterlife, essentially. And it is a library where she can pull books from the shelves and relive or live these new lives in ways that she, you know, could have gone in her life, or different lives, different dimensions that she could have lived, and she gets to jump into those lives and live them. And I won't spoil it for you, but it was so nice to actually see and to put in perspective, because I think all of us, and especially me over the last year, have really struggled with finding the good in things and thinking that if I just had more money, or, you know, if I was more popular, more pretty, if I married someone else, if I, you know, made this decision in my life, that things would have been different for me. And that's kind of what Nora, or that is essentially exactly what Nora gets to experience in this book. She gets to, like I said, to live all these other lives, and some of them are very fanciful, some of them are very simple. And you know, she kind of gets to have that like inner dialogue. And as she's going through the lives, she, you know, obviously doesn't settle on just one initially. So you get to sort of experience her, you know, kind of break down and go over why a certain life that she is in isn't the life for her. And she sort of starts, I don't know, kind of comparing like the life that she's currently living with any of the other lives that she could have. And it's really good, because I think it's like it's like what we do in our heads, like the mental rumination that we go through with our lives. Somebody basically wrote a story about it, like us just imagining what else our lives could be like. And I found myself so full of gratitude for the life that I do live now and everything that I do have. And I think it was just a really good reminder of, you know, how to be thankful for what you have, and how even if we think that if we had this or we'd have done this, that everything would have worked out and been different, how that's not always the case, and how it can, you know, you can make the most out of what you have, and not even necessarily the most, like the life that you currently live can be the life that you've always wanted to live, and it can be the perfect life for you. So I found that book really, like I said, very poignant, very like hard hitting, and I wouldn't say it necessarily is like adult, young adult, anything like that. I think for me, it was just I think anyone could read it. Aside from like some of the content warnings in it, I really, really like that book. I think that might have been my favorite book of the year. It was very, very good. If you haven't read it, I would recommend it. But those are the 5 books that I wanted to talk about. Like I said, I only read 37 books this year, so it's not like I have a whole lot to choose from, but I feel like the ones that I did really enjoy really stuck with me, and they're definitely ones that I wanted to share with you. Let me know down below if you've read any of them, what you thought of them, if you plan on reading them, if you read them and hated them. I'd love to know why. If you found, you know, the same likes as me in the books as well. And if you have any more recommendations for books that are similar to these, also leave those down below. But thank you guys so much for watching. I love you, and I will see you in my next video, which hopefully will not be 6 months from now.